Welcome back to the Camp Memories podcast from Kramer to the Hill. This is part 2 of our conversation with John Bard, who for 25 years was the executive chef and ran the camp's off-season events. In part 2, we talk about John's kosher-style menus, his favorite dinner at camp, and the great 2003 food fight that I swear I had no part of whatsoever. If this is your first episode with us, we have linked part 1 in the card above and also down in the description below.
So the next
Enjoy.
thing I'm wondering about is how did the Jewish nature of the camps affect your work? In other words, were there ever times in which you heard, "Oh, we're Jewish, we can't do that," or
Mm.
or "We're Jewish, please do this"? How did that all work out for you?
Well, again, I think the um, the um, the Phoenix came all together. Everything came together so nicely because I grew up in Virginia, and basically Minnesota to Virginia. My dad was in the Navy, and I didn't know anything about really the Jewish religion. I had to ask my mother what religion we were. I didn't really grow up with. My father was gone a lot, and so I didn't really grow up with the like a foundation. But I did marry a nice Jewish girl. You know,
Oh,
Nina Bard is a nice Jewish girl, and she's not really practicing, at all. Not hardcore, but so I had an idea. My parent-in-laws, when I got this job, were like over the moon. They were like, "Oh my God, look at this," and so, but I also used the kosher style as an advantage because I try to, not mixing the meat and dairy together. It lends itself to you can, not use so much butter and stuff and use olive oil. And it kind of lends itself to that Mediterranean-esque kind of lifestyle, which I was good with. And so I still use it today. Like, I will make all the side dishes vegan and gluten free, which help with with a couple of major allergies, and then just rotate the proteins or whatever. But it simplifies that process. So like I would say, don't fire the broccoli until you see the whites of their eyes, because you want that broccoli to be nice and green and clean. And so it would just really be a steam and then out, and let, if they want to salt and pepper it, go for it. They want a little olive oil on the side, whatever. It wasn't like you had to steam it or roast it and then, put something on it or whatever. So it was try to be very nice and clean and organized with the food quality. And so, it kind of lended well. I love the traditions, and I was able to be part of that because food is so important in the Jewish religion that I was a part of that, and so we were a part of that. And we used to always joke about the prayers on Friday night. We would everybody. Even if you didn't even speak English in the kitchen, they knew those prayers. And when you got to the third one, you guys better be ready. Here we go.
I love
So,
it. That's great.
right.
That's great. No,
So
it's
we would have the song leader say, "Okay, don't start unless you look at me first, that we're ready. I might lead you to song and dance for 5 minutes,
yeah,
until we get ready." So anyway,
that's great.
yeah.
So speaking of dietary issues, as you evolved over the years, there was a great evolution about dietary restrictions for campers and certain staff who were, had peanut allergies or
Gluten.
gluten,
Gluten.
or, especially.
Right.
So, how did you see that evolve at camp, and how much of an adjustment did you have to make? You were, you know, serving essentially 1,000 people in a 10-week period, especially during the summers.
Yeah. 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 Well, when I first started, if you're a vegetarian, you just go to the salad bar. That was that was
Salad
the
bar. Oh
that
my
was
God,
that
salad
yeah.
bar.
Yeah, but I think as I said, the if you make it vegan and gluten-free side dishes, and then just modify the main dish for whatever dietary restriction you have, it makes it a lot simpler, and it translates to your staff a lot easier. My staff, or it's the kitchen staff. So we would come up with different things, to do to try to make it similar, but inclusive. And if the side dishes are all on the table and they can eat all those, then they can just come up for the main entree. That helped out a lot. And we had recipes for that. And also, that goes back to the ordering system, which is my homework, or what I used to do is I had a very intense order guide and ordering system. So those products weren't even in house. Like we would make sure that we didn't have peanut laced items in the house so nobody could mess it up. So, I would keep it simple and just educate my guys on making sure that we were doing the right thing, and just empowering them to do the right thing. I would always have somebody in charge of special diets also. Sometimes we'd have interns and stuff like that would come in. We had a special area in the kitchen to manufacture special diets. Peanuts were a big thing back then. Peanuts are starting to slow down a little bit. In the 90s and the early 2000s, they were definitely a big thing. So we would have a designated area. I think gluten free has taken over that major allergy. So we would just designate that. And I had a saying. I said, you take care of the special diet people, everybody else falls into line. I mean, the carnivores, they're all over there just whatever. You make those kids special, and or feel not only like part of the group, but also that they're taken care of with the least bit of angst, or least bit of like, hey, where's my food, kind of thing. Then they're happy and the whole camp's happy, because the other guys, they're easy. You just put it out there and they go for it. So
Like the old taquito eating contests.
yes, yeah, yeah, those kind of guys.
Did you ever have campers or staff who wanted to keep kosher at Kramer?
Yes, yes,
How'd you deal with
yes,
that?
we did. Well, we had a kosher purveyor, and we would do kosher chicken every Friday night. We started
Oh,
that for 10 or 15 people or whatever, wrapped in tin foil, that kind of
wow.
thing. And we kept a lot of, again, it was like ordering processes. I would make sure that we had a hechsher on the majority of the stuff. So we kind of just tried to go that direction um, with that. But yeah, Friday night we'd have kosher chicken for sure. Uh, Most of the time they'd have to eat vegetarian
Yeah.
during the week,
And
but
dairy. Yeah.
yeah, and so we tried to, we kept as much hechsher's on stuff as possible,
That's
and of
amazing.
course Hebrew nationals, but you know, which were
Well,
a little
but
more
still,
expensive, but they had a
oh,
hechsher on them. So
but even
yeah,
to have made the effort to do as much kashrut as you did is a serious endeavor.
yeah,
It's not simple, and it's also an investment by the camps to
yeah.
have spent on that. So that's to your credit. But I'm also curious. I mean, for so many of us at camp, our memories on Friday nights are about sharing the challah in the middle of the table with other people at the table and blessing it and then tearing it apart, sometimes nicely, sometimes not so nicely. But I'm wonder I'm wondering, as the guy in charge of food, how did you order challah, and how did that all work out?
We had a great baker over in Agora
Oh,
who I'm still in touch with, actually. who made the challahs for us, and we'd have to go over there and get them every every
Logistics
every
team.
Friday. Yeah, exactly. Logistics team, go get those challahs. And it would be, I think it was two challahs a table, maybe a challah and a half,
Oh,
depending, that we would get, for everybody, and then we would, cut up the rest of them and toss them out the window to everybody for the seconds. But I again, that's those little details of camp, of the food service, really elevated everything. Making sure that the challah was good, it was fresh. Sometimes some hoogs would make the challah, come in and make the challah for the day. We'd make the dough. We had a really good challah. We got pretty good at a challah dough, and so we would do that sometimes, and mainly for Saturday. But for Friday night too, we would sometimes use uh, made challah from the campers, which was great.
Yeah,
So
I know that in our transition, location to location, the question had always been, can we find challah in our area that is like as close as possible to what, you used to order from Agora?
right,
We've been lucky the last couple of summers. Our challah dealer is not only a camp alum, but is right around the corner from camp in Carlsbad. So it's been great that we've been
nice,
able to have that. It's not the same as the Agora challah, but it's pretty
right,
good.
right. Now, do they supply the honey bears for you? That's the key. You got to have those honey bears ready to
No,
go.
no honey bears, but the kitchen does have honey available. So
Okay,
the
all right,
those
all right.
traditions we've been able to keep. Um, you
Nice.
you've talked a lot about, obviously your experiences getting to camp and then Howard coming a few months later. You worked with Howard for a very long time, and then Doug came along. So I'd love to hear your experiences of like getting to know Doug. Doug has told all these stories of like getting to camp and, meeting my leadership counselors ahead of the '05 summer, and they're like, "Here is leadership. If you ruin this, we will end you." And so I just like, what was your experience, getting to know Doug, working with Doug, showing him the systems and any systems that evolved after Doug came and took over?
Very good question. Very good question. Doug and I eventually were great. I think, he was coming in a new situation. I was established, but Doug let me do what I want to do because I was really in charge of the whole off season, and that was my big thing. The summer camp was really just kind of running, and as I said, was kind of just a big group that was there for 10 weeks. And Doug, and so the off season, Doug would let me do my thing. He would come on Thursdays, and we became really close and good. But coming from Howard Kaplan, who I started with, who I, his leadership really, made my career, was difficult little transition, and both sides. It was he was new and he was trying to work it out. He was from New York, so he had that whole New York swagger, and here we are in California on the beach, so there was definitely a little, molding and coming together
You didn't
that
want to
had to
let the
take place,
ponytail
but
deceive you.
and that frickin' ponytail. My dad was in the Navy, I used to, and he still got that ponytail, doesn't he?
Yep.
It still does. Yep.
So anyway,
Yeah.
Yeah.
but no, ultimately it was awesome.
Yeah. And then I have to ask, as somebody who was very much not a participant in any willing type of way, in 2003, there was a little bit of a dinner incident because my counselors, in their infinite wisdom, decided that the program was going to be messy night for evening program. And to start messy night, they took away all of our silverware and put the tables on the floor, and
Oh
spaghetti was on the
yeah.
menu. And as you can imagine, things were thrown around. I like, we got very much yelled at as a collective. But I would love to hear your perspective of all of that.
Well, as Doug's ponytail. Well, my theory about that. I'm a very structured guy, and so that definitely was infuriating. But I remember having to bring in the hose to hose out and squeegee out the dining hall, and I still think there's probably some stuff on the ceiling tiles that probably never came off. And I would walk around and go, "Oh yeah, remember that?" Like there's you missed the spot. But I think it took at least till the next summer to get all the remnants out of there, like in the window sills of the dining hall.
Yeah.
I
So,
I I can tell you, John, I was there, and when I was sitting at the staff table with Adam Panish, and I all of a sudden I start to see, kids screaming and things flying. I said, Adam, we're going on to the Lido deck.
yeah, yeah,
And we watched it all evolve from the Lido deck.
the window. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Through the window,
Well,
which was
right.
protecting us.
One of my favorite camp meals was when we did the parchment paper rolls on the table, and we did rib night,
Yep.
no silverware, and rolls of paper towels on the table. That was awesome. That was really a cool night with corn on the cob and steak fries.
I remember those.
Yeah,
That was
yeah.
that was
No
that was
plates. Yeah,
fun. And I think
yeah,
one year you
yeah.
did turkey legs.
Yep, 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 yep. A little Renaissance fair inspired turkey legs. Yep, we tried that. Those were expensive though. I
I'm
remember
sure.
that. Doug was like, I don't know, dude.
Yeah. Speaking of expensive, obviously when you're cooking for a smaller group, say, senior staff week and staff week, and having grown up as a camper and then moving on to staff, I got to see, both sides of the summer meal schedule. Can you just talk about like some of the senior staff foods that you used to treat us with? I miss the cedar plank salmon a lot and think about it annually.
Right?
Can't believe that was a
Well,
camp ever.
Mm-hmm.
Cedar
I
plank
know.
salmon. That's
Uh,
Yeah.
well, yeah, that wasn't even my idea. The first bar mitzvah we did, I can't remember her name either, but I have a picture that she sent me up right over here. But they started that cedar plank salmon tradition, and it really was a great dish to do down on the field because we had the mesquite barbecues with the lids, and I would actually literally go to Home Depot and buy 6 foot planks, cedar planks. I had to make sure they were not treated, because you don't want to kill anybody. And I would cut them in half. I'd cut them in, you know, 18-inch lengths, and we would soak them overnight, and then we would marinate the salmon in maple syrup and Dijon mustard and thyme, and we'd lay them on there and bake them off, and then on the barbecue with the lid, and then serve them whole. I mean, they were the easiest thing in the world because you just cut it off what you'd want. But my theory was with the senior staff was treat them really good, do some good quality product, and then they launch into grilled cheese sandwiches, when the kids get there.
Right.
And that philosophy would last about 3 or 4 weeks, and then they would get sick of the food a little bit. And, that by the end of the third session, they would be ready to go home. But you know, again with the constant staff that I had and the conference center, we would do nice events in the conference center, and the staff was kind of used to it. And when we started to do bar mitzvahs and weddings and that kind of stuff, the food was elevated, which was great. And so I would use those dishes and then bring them into the summer for senior staff week and that kind of thing. So
Yeah. And
yeah,
then real quick, I have heard stories from my Adam Robb, of bring your own steak night up at Hilltop. And that kind of
Ah.
turned into camp provides steak to Hilltop staff. So if you can talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, yeah, everybody wanted steak, and steak is hard to execute because, you got different temperatures. And so when you're cooking for 60 people or 80 people, whatever, to have the different temperatures was difficult. And to keep them, that's one of those items that, you can't have them all done at the same time,
Right.
which is a problem with that, serving family style, or they want to do it at closing banquets all the time. And it's like, because, a well done steak cold isn't very good,
No.
bring your own steak night, and even cooking your own steak at Hilltop was executable because they had 30 people and they could all gather around the barbecue. But down at Hess Kramer, when you got 120 staff, it was a little harder to execute. And that's where the tri-tip came in, because that was a good alternative where you cook all those, to different temperatures, but there's also like, it was rare in the middle and it was medium on the outside. And so you could kind of, by carving it, kind of song and dance around everybody's preference to the doneness of their meat. So,
Right. Yeah.
yeah.
Hey, John, would it be possible, if you've got it written down, to send us a copy of your cedar plank salmon recipe?
Sure.
Because I think that might be a nice little premium for those who want to see it and have it be part of this podcast.
We'll link it
Yeah.
below, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
I can email it to you. Sure.
Fantastic.
Thanks.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
I love
yeah.
it.
It's for 100, but no.
Yeah. Well, that's
Have to move it
But
down.
I think I do have it like that. Yeah.
yeah. I just listen. Cut it down as you need it.
Right. There you go.
That's the way it works.
Yeah, there you go.
Adapted for the home kitchen.
Thank you for joining
Right.
us for part 2 of our conversation with John Bard. If you haven't already done so, please subscribe and hit the bell for notifications so you don't miss out on part 3. And tune into part 1 if you haven't already. Don't forget to mark your calendars for camp's upcoming events in Carlsbad this summer, including Mitzvah Night on June 27th, Shabbat 75 on Friday, July 24th, and Leadership Night on Saturday, July 25th. And if you haven't heard from camp in a while, you can update your contact information by visiting wbtcamps.org/alumni/update your info, all one word, which is linked down in the description. And that's how you'll be able to hear when registration opens for all of these events. Thank you for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you in the next episode. 1, 2, wash your hands.